Gritty Nurse Podcast, an unfiltered discourse on nursing and healthcare. My name is Sarah,
And my name is Amy.
and we are your Gritty Nurses. So today we wanted to talk about an episode that is going to focus a bit on how to survive nursing school. And we wanted to talk about our experiences and sort of give our listeners some tips onto how they can get through their program and still make it out on the other side.
Right.
So,
That survivability aspect.
right. So maybe we can just talk about how our weeks were. How was your week, Amy?
Pretty good, very low key. I mean, I think what's kind of humming on the back of everyone's mind is the whole COVID 19, hearing about the various different cases going on. But, like, I mean, that's kind of all that I've been really tracking this week. Like, my weekend, it was very, very boring. I did a lot of baking today. I did some crazy marshmallow Rice Krispies. I'd call them Rice Krispie squares, but really they are like marshmallow squares because they're so gooey. And I baked a cake and I did mini muffins. So I did lots of baking, but just like it was just the whole COVID 19 is kind of on my mind because we went out shopping. And as we were walking in Costco in Hamilton, we noticed a couple people wearing just simple face masks. Obviously it's kind of shocking. You're just not used to seeing walking around and seeing people wearing face masks. So it was just kind of bizarre. We did notice that it was much busier, or maybe it's all in my head, but it seemed like it was much busier and there was no water, which was really weird. Normally Jordan and I will get like a bottle of water, like a package of water, sorry.
Uh huh.
Um, and there was no water, no bottled water. So I'm assuming people are stocking up. I think there's more I think there's just a little bit of hysteria going on. I think we have something like 17 presumptive cases or 16 presumptive cases, but yeah, I just think I was surprised to see what was going on just being out in the grocery store.
And is this the first time you've seen people with masks on?
Well, I've seen people wear masks before COVID 19, but not usually. I've been like downtown Toronto, and it was just weird to be in the grocery store to see people with simple face masks on. It was only, I think, like one person or two people, but it's still very odd thing to see.
Yeah, that's pretty odd. I don't know what it's like. I know I take the subway to work every day, and I have not noticed an increase so far in people wearing face masks, but that might change pretty quickly.
Right, right, right. Like,
Yeah, so my week was sort of. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just about to ask you about your weekend.
Oh, well, I feel like I haven't really done too much either. I did go out last night for a friend's birthday and we went to Korean barbecue, so
Ooh,
that
that
was
sounds
pretty
really
fun.
good.
Yeah, it was very yummy and I did not notice any face masks while I was out, now that I think about it.
Good,
But
good, good.
I also did some tobogganing today, so that was fun. I did some tobogganing with my son because the weather was really good. It wasn't too cold, but there was still enough snow on the ground that we could do that.
I was gonna say because it's like pretty like there's not much going on around here, and it was like +3, so not too bad.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can get into our topic. I was just going to say that Amy and I, like, we've had different experiences, obviously, in nursing school. I think our life situations were a bit different, so maybe we can offer different perspectives on uh, the things that we used to get through nursing school. One of the things I was going to say is I went to nursing school directly from high school, so I was still pretty young when I got to nursing school. I had moved away for school, so that was a big adjustment. I remember sitting in class. I think it was one of the first classes I was in, and we were sort of broken up into small groups and doing introductions. And I might have been in a really smart group because I remember most of the people in my group saying they graduated valedictorian of their high school. And so I felt like really, really inadequate. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing and maybe I didn't belong there. So that was sort of what I started with. I felt like I went from being someone that pretty much knew what they were doing in high school to really feeling like I needed to catch up and everyone else kind of knew what was going on and I didn't. So I don't know if you had any experiences like that, Amy, but that's kind of what I started with.
Yeah, well,
Is just feeling like everyone was so much smarter than me, which maybe wasn't the case, but that's kind of how I felt at the time.
my start into nursing school was quite different because actually, my pathway was quite jagged, I guess. Essentially, I wanted to be a child and youth worker. I know that sounds really bizarre, or maybe not so bizarre, but that was actually the first path I took. So I actually um, started doing a child and youth worker course, and I think I got about half the year, or about no, I think I got almost. I finished a full semester, and I was in like my second semester, and I was just like, no, this is definitely not what I want to do. And I went back and took like a general arts and science course. So they were actually offering, like, if you took, like, it was kind of like a pre-health course, that if you did this pre-health, that you can get into the nursing program. Because I'll be honest, like, not that I like mucked around too much in high school, but I wasn't really like the best high school student. So, like, my grades weren't the greatest. So, I did this kind of pre health care type of course, but there was actually drama that kind of unfolded with this course. So, I like, it was myself and I think two other of my colleagues, two or three other of my colleagues, that did this kind of general arts and science healthcare stream course through the college. And we got to the end and they were like, oh, no, no, this is not like, you can't use this to bridge into the nursing course. And we were fully told before we applied that that was definitely something that we could do. So long story short, we ended up taking it to the board. And this is the time where I think I kind of mentioned this before, where like my mom is this type of person who, like, she's like a champion. She wants to fight for everybody. And of course, um, my mom wanted to be involved, so she was kind of like there at this meeting and pretty much putting in a word for, that the school was kind of screwing us over, and that they need to hold their word. So eventually they did, and me and I think it was three or four of my other peers, we all got into the nursing program. But even saying that, like, I mean, if you look at the requirements to get into the nursing program now, like, I mean, if you've gotten in, give yourself like a huge round of applause, because the requirements are so stringent. They were not, I could tell you, they were not that stringent when I was applying to nursing school. And by God, like, anybody who got it, it's almost as hard as getting into med school.
Yeah, I know, I agree. It's really crazy now what it's become. Even in the last 5 years, I think the requirements have gotten so much higher, at least in our area. So it's definitely something that you should give yourself a pat on the back, and half of the battle is getting into nursing school, deciding you want to be a nurse. And what I would say is just early on, really identify who or what your personal supports are going to be, because you'll definitely need them as things like midterms come up and you start your clinicals. You just really want to make sure you have a good support system.
Yeah, and especially if it's like your first time kind of like leaving home. Like, for example, at least I can't really actually speak to it because I didn't leave home. I stayed at home and kind of commuted back and forth to the college and university campus. But, like, I mean, I think having a life outside of nursing, and I know that sounds crazy because I know it's super intense, but still, even if you can involve yourself into extracurricular, like, I think that would be something that's really worthwhile, and definitely know who your support people are, know who your study buddies are. Like, I think um, I was able to kind of get through nursing school because I had really good study buddies. And eventually, probably when we get closer to the end, I'll kind of give my tips and tricks in terms of how I really survived nursing school. But I'll throw this one back to you, Sarah.
Yeah, this is something I'll be interested to hear about because we've never talked about this before. This really predates our time working together.
Yeah, it
Um,
does.
Yeah, I was gonna just start with another story though, because like I said, I moved away for school and I had to learn how to live on my own in addition to starting a program and also meeting all different people. I remember being completely overwhelmed it was one of my first anatomy exams, and I remember thinking, like, this is crazy. There are so many muscles and nerves in the body. None of this makes sense, and remember being completely overwhelmed. And I did mostly interact with people that were not in my program just because of where I lived on campus. So I felt like at the time everyone was sort of going through a similar adjustment, and people were going through just as hard exams, if not harder. So I thought, okay, well, if they can get through it, I will figure out a way to get through it. Um, but yeah, there's just that. I remember just sitting there crying because
Oh
I did
no.
so badly. I did so badly on my first anatomy exam. But I think it was just a real wake up call to me that I needed to learn how to study. I never really learned how to study in high school. I sort of just got through it. But that was one thing I was going to say is figuring out your ideal environment for studying. So it might be that you need to study in a library, or you need to study at home, or you need to have a study group. And I think it's really important to figure that part out. And it might involve a little bit of experimentation to see what works for you. I don't think there's a certain or one way to study that works for everyone. So I see a lot of posts in Facebook groups about how you need to study, or I don't know. I think people are just looking for a quick solution. So obviously you don't want to cram before the exam if you can help it, but obviously if it's the night before, then you really have no choice. But I always find like it's good to study in little breaks, and because I have a really short attention span, I like to do something that I call the 45-15 rule,
Right, right,
which
right.
is for every hour you spend 45 minutes studying without taking a break, and then you take a break for 15 minutes and do whatever it is, like maybe you go watch TV, or you do a quick little workout in your room, or just something that can sort of give your mind a break, and then you go back to studying again, because I could never study for more than 2 hours straight, I would say.
Yeah, well, so I definitely had a very different methodology, and maybe I'm giving away my little study tricks, but I hope it might help somebody out there who might be listening. And really, I think these skills are pretty much transferable to anybody who's a student. I don't think it's necessary. Well, I obviously it wouldn't work for all cases, but I mean, if you're studying and you have multiple choice types of tests, which are mainly like the health sciences, then I think this was a tip that I use. Well, one of the things I can kind of talking about a story for me, anatomy and physiology, I was very, very interested because at one point in time, I was thinking about maybe after nursing school, I would go to med school to become a coroner. So I
Oh
was
wow.
very, very interested in the body. And then, yes, this kind of ties into me actually doing some studies of biological anthropology and forensic anthropology at U of T. But I was very, very, I guess, morbidly fascinated with the human body. So for me, studying anatomy and physiology was kind of like this whole, like, I don't know, I just took on this crazy interest and I actually became a lab tech working in our body lab. So essentially, we had a cadaver lab, and I was actually one of the facilitators in our cadaver lab helping nursing students. And this was actually, I think I had the opportunity to do this in my second year of nursing to actually help train students on like looking at the body with a cadaver. So I was, yeah, more like I was just really, really fascinated, and I guess still to some some degree fascinated by true crime stories and and these types of things, and like the first 48, whatever. Anyways, I'm diverging, but yeah, I mean, the body has always been very interesting to me. But in terms of a study tip, like one of the things I used to do as a student was I don't know about how they do it now, but like we used to get lots and lots of PowerPoints. And what I used to do is used to make my own study PowerPoints, and I would actually kind of like print them out like flashcards, and I would go through them. And event as soon as I kind of knew that type of topic or whatever that idea was from that flashcard, I take it out of my pile that I was studying from, and then I only studied the stuff that now I just didn't know. And then my pile got smaller and smaller closer to the time where it came to a test. So like for me, I don't know, that was something that worked for me. So I just kind of made my own kind of PowerPoints and dwindled them down until I didn't like I kind of over like was oversaturated with the material, I guess. Um, And the other thing I
Yeah,
did,
I
I
kind of did the same thing. Like I would hand write out certain things because I felt like writing it out just helped me remember it better. And then I would do things like color code things or make up acronyms. So I would make up acronyms, especially with the the 12 nerves that I was trying to memorize. I remember just making up a rhyme, which I've heard of other people doing as well. So I think it's just like you said, figuring out something that works for you, something that makes sense, and it might not involve reading the same thing over and over that someone else has written because it's not really activating, I guess, certain processes in your brain. It's really passive and you just keep reading the same thing over and over.
yeah, I mean, I could tell you for sure, like, I drove my family members insane because I used to, like, practice on them and I would, I would, like, get them to quiz me. Oh, yeah, that was my other really big tip and trick. I used to, and I think this is actually really important. I used to use like, let's say you had multiple choice questions in your textbook. That's what I used as my other form of study guide to like test my knowledge. And I found that a lot of the questions pulled from like either test banks online or through your textbook were the same questions that they asked on my test. So it was like I'd sit down in
Really?
my test and I'd be like, "Oh snap! I know this because I literally just did this." So I don't know, like I did really well in anatomy and physiology, like creepily well.
Well,
So
I guess with your preoccupation with the cadaver lab, it probably just was really interesting to you to begin with. So
yes,
it didn't maybe feel like as much work as some other courses might be.
but then I mean, like you're around people all day, so I ended up just like, and especially because like I was dating Jordan at the time, so I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do the 12 nerve tests on you. I'm going to do that, like I'm going to do my percussion test on you, and like I drove all my like I was like, oh, I'm going to do a BP on this person. And I like drove like I just drove my family members crazy. They were like my guinea pigs for everything, and that was just I just yeah, I just kind of relied on the support of them and using them as my guinea pigs and other resources to kind of help my way in terms of my studying to help me get through that way.
One of the other tips I was going to suggest is I don't know if you got a list of readings that you had to do every week for every course, but I remember getting tons and tons and tons of readings and never being able to keep up. And finally, I just decided I'm only going to do the required readings. I'm not going to do the suggested or the recommended because I just don't have time. And I felt like it wasn't really the best use of my time. So I only did the required ones at the end.
Yeah, so I think
And
this
that
is
really saved me a lot of time.
yeah, and I think this is actually like a very good um, learning tool or learning curve for people because I kind of got to the point where I was just like, I'm not reading all of this. Like, there's no way you can have all that information and have to use it. So like, I'm sorry, they give you way too many required readings or not just readings in general. And honestly, I'd say out straight out of the gate, I've used probably 2% of the stuff that I read in articles in my actual practice. I know I might get slammed for that, but it's really the truth because a lot of it's so theoretical and not necessarily practical. Like if we're talking about like evidence-based research, we use that all the time. But I mean, in terms of like nursing theory and a lot of the theoretical aspects, I don't use any of it.
I agree. I agree. Someone's probably going to kill us for saying this, but it's so true. When you're so pressed for time, you just can't do every single reading. And I know there were some people that did, and I don't know how they managed, but I would say just stick to what's required. Also, in terms of textbooks, I at the beginning I was buying the newest textbook for every class, and I realized towards the end that I could easily buy the edition before, and it would be probably 95%, if not 100% of the same material. It's
Oh,
just the next edition. It might be like as small as a paragraph or half a page they've added. It's now from the second edition to the third edition.
right. Like, I mean, there was some shady stuff that was going down when I was in nursing school. Like, we did a lot of textbook sharing. So essentially, one person bought the textbook, and then we all like photocopied it, and then like split
Oh
paying the
yes, yes,
person
I've
for the
heard of that.
textbook. Or we actually had like a textbook store that was like across the street from our college slash university, and they would actually like photocopy textbooks. I don't even know if that was legal, but like we used to go over there and buy like photocopied versions of our textbook. And then, okay, so here's another gritty nurse truth. Okay, I have lots of nursing textbooks. I'm you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually take a picture of them. They're in like pristine condition because I read what I needed to read, and I'm pretty sure I could say I've never read through a whole nursing textbook. I don't even think I've read through a quarter of a nursing textbook. Sorry.
Right, right. I kind of Marie Kondoed my textbooks a couple weekends ago, and I looked through the textbooks, and literally the only thing that I used my textbooks for in the last 10 years was as a footrest. I
Oh
needed a
no.
footrest because I'm pretty short, right? So I need a footrest sometimes, and that's what I used my textbooks for the last 10 years. So I thought, I need to get rid of these textbooks. If that's all I use them for, didn't even crack them open. I might as well just save the space in the house and just get rid of
Well,
them.
see, this is
So
a
that's what I
thing,
did.
right? Like, I feel like I've probably spent thousands of dollars on my nursing textbooks. So it's just like, I just feel like I need to hold on to them, even though I know, like, uh, with the so much information online, and even a lot of these textbooks now, you can get them online. Like, I don't know. It's just,
I feel the same way. I had a few that I couldn't get rid of, but really and truthfully, am I going to use them? Probably not.
yeah. Well,
So,
trust me, I'm sure they're on the, like the 50th edition now, anyway. So whatever you had now is obsolete, which is ridiculous. But like, I mean, I think, I don't know, textbooks in general are just kind of like this awful ploy for the universities and colleges to make money. And yes, there are some great information, but a lot of the stuff you can get online now. It's just, I'm not saying by any means just don't go out and buy your textbooks. I just think there are other clever ways of ascertaining this information, whether
right.
it's
So
legal or not.
one of the other suggestions I was going to give is really get to know your TA and attend any sessions that they put together, because working or knowing someone that used to be a TA, like for example, my husband was a TA when he was in graduate school, he would use these sessions to actually go over previous exam questions.
Right.
And the people that attended basically were fed the exam or the midterm. So if you didn't attend, it was really to your disadvantage. And because TAs typically have more time than professors, they can spend that extra time with you. If you're struggling in a certain area or you need help, they can really be the person to connect you to what you need. And also because they're still students, they kind of understand what you're going through. It wasn't, they're still students, and they probably finished their undergrad not that long ago, so they would have an idea of what you're going through as well.
Yeah. So like, I mean, I TA'd for U of T. And I'm trying to kind of think about like, I think the biggest thing is like, yes, get to know your TAs and really use them as a resource. But like, if we're just speaking about papers in general, okay, so like if you don't have a TA and you have a paper that's due, nursing paper, whatever the case may be, you always hear this: use the writing center, use the writing center. No, I'm telling you, use the writing center. Honest to God, it's like, just get your paper written, take it to them, and let them go through it with a fine tooth comb. And then the other tip would be get to know what your professor likes, because at the end of the day, it's what they like and how they grade you. I'm sorry, I know that might be wrong, but it is, in my experience at least, absolutely true. You know, if you know what your prof is about, you know about their history, what they a little bit about what their likes are. It's just, I don't know, you almost tailor the paper to what their interests are, and bada boom, bada bing, you go from having B plus papers to A plus papers. So that was at least
Absolutely.
in
I
my
think
experience.
there was a teacher or a professor I had in graduate school, and she had the weirdest way of explaining assignments to us. And to this day, I have an assignment that I still don't really understand. But I remember going to the writing center out of desperation because the topic was you were supposed to write a whole essay on nursing as keeping. I'm like, what the heck does that mean? I don't
Nursing
even
as a
know. There's so
what?
many different nursing as keeping. See, you're confused as well, right? I still, to this day, do not know what she wanted, but I remember going to the writing center out of desperation, and because they're not, you know, just for nurses. They're really for anyone in general. They really tried to help me dissect this and told me or gave me suggestions of different angles I could take to write this paper, and I passed. So I think that was good. But they're really there for you. There are so many resources on campus, or even if you're doing an online degree, I'm sure there are a lot of resources out there. It's just a matter of finding them. And most of them, if they're through the university, they're free of charge.
Yeah, and I mean, another tip is look at your rubric and write your paper to your rubric. So if it says an intro is worth 5 marks, make sure you give an intro with maybe 5 points, or like, build up your intro to have your, like, what are you talking about? Like, what is the crux of your argument? What are the various different topics that you're going to be talking about, and how are you going to conclude that? That's a good introduction. Make sure that you have, like, if it says, okay, describe what it is that you're talking about, or if it's like, we want you to use someone's theory to describe, make sure you have like Benner or whomever you're going to use as your theorist, and use their theory to describe what you're trying to talk about. Honestly, because when I used to mark papers, that's how you mark them. You're like, okay, so did this person look at the rubric and put this information in? If it's not there, you can't get the mark. So just make sure that you follow like, I used to actually cut and paste my rubric into my paper and like write my paper with my rubric in it. It was just That was just one of the things that I used to do. But I have to be honest, and here I'm diverging again. And I'm like, what the F with some of the nursing papers that they're actually asking nursing students to write about nowadays. Like, my cousin came to me with one of these papers, and I was like, what are you writing about? Like, it makes no sense. I was just like, oh my God, it's like so abstract. And I was just like, I'm sorry. Like, I don't even know how to really help you. Like, I found him a couple articles, but I was just like, this is so bizarre. It was like,
Do you remember what the topic was or what the class
it was
was?
like a coat of arms assignment where he has to, like, I think it was something like he has to design a nursing coat of arms, and then he's got to talk
Oh my
about,
god, really?
yes, yeah, and then he's got to talk about like what was it, like, he's got to talk about caring and like, it was just bizarre. I was just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry for you that you have to write this nonsense. And really, it is at the end of the day, like, fluffy nonsense. Like, I really think that if you want people to critically think, ask them questions and get them to write papers where they have to use that thinking. That type of paper that my cousin was talking to me about, I was just like, how's that going to help you?
Yeah, there's a big gap between what you do in class and obviously what you learn in clinical. I think that's something that we all experience, but it's really about the whole experience and what you take from each part to make yourself the best nurse you can be.
Oh, absolutely. But I still have to say that some of the stuff I just shake my head. I'm like, I don't know why you're learning this like crazy fluffy stuff when there are people like dying, and just give them an assignment that will really make them critically think about the world around them. I think those are the more informative ones, because I had a couple papers where I had professors who were like, this is actually happening right now. I think there was one where we were talking about oh my God, I can't remember the name of this indigenous town, but essentially, oh, I'm going to say it wrong. I can't say it. It starts with a W, but it was this indigenous town that they're like, this is what's happening here, and we want you guys to do some research. And essentially, it was a paper, but it was like, write a letter to this politician about how, like, using the determinants of health, how we can help support these First Nations people. And I was like, yeah, this makes sense. This is like
That's a
right
good
up my
topic.
alley. And then it's like, and then I was like, so now you guys wrote these papers, let's send them in. I was like, you're damn right. Now I feel like I'm doing something, right? But some of this fluffy, yeah, some of this fluffy shit, I can't take it. Sorry, Sarah. I'm like trying so hard not to swear, and I'm like, nah.
It's okay, just let it out.
I
It's
have
okay,
to.
let it
It's the gritty nurse side of me.
out. Yeah, and also just making sure that you focus on your physical and mental health. So we talked a lot about how you can study and get good grades, but I think it's also really important to check in mentally and physically how you're doing, because it's hard. Nursing school is hard, right? There's the mental stress of studying for exams. Then when you start clinicals, it's like the long hours plus in addition to all the paperwork that you have to do. So just really making sure that you find little parts of your day that you can practice mindfulness or even been in a bit of physical activity, I think it really helps just with stress levels and also clearing your head.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
even if it's just something like going for a brisk walk, I mean, if that's all you have time for, that's all you have time for. Or taking some flights of stairs just to get your heart rate up and that sort of thing, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, and I like if
Also,
I
I would say that, sorry, one thing that I started doing in university was take naps. I never took naps before that. I don't really take naps anymore, but I found that just the schedule I had, I really needed to take naps just to get through the day.
well, have you've heard about the nursing nap? Because I'm pretty sure you probably are as good at as it as I am. It's essentially where you can fall asleep in no time at all for like 5 minutes and wake up refreshed. Like I used to do it on break all the
Oh.
time. I'd have like a morning break and I'd go into the lunchroom and it's like 9:30. I fall asleep for my half an hour, get up and I'm like, woo, I'm so good. I feel so much better. But yeah, like I don't know, it's just like this nursing thing where I've learned to like shut down, wake up, good to go.
I I don't know. I also used to take naps on my break at work. I would more sleep after lunch though. I would eat and be like, oh, I feel like I have itis. I need to just shut my eyes. But we would not. So the unit I worked on at the time, we never formally handed over our patients to our buddies. I don't really know why we had buddies, to be honest, because we would always still carry our phones on us
Oh
into the
god.
break room.
Oh.
So if anyone needed me, my phone would just go off, right? And then I would just wake up and answer it and go back to work. But it also worked out. I mean, when it was busy, it was really busy. But when it was dead, I mean, you could just sit as long as you wanted. As long as you got your work done, you could sit in that lunchroom because you had your phone on you. So if anyone needed you, it just went straight to your phone. So I think that was also good in a way.
So, what I wanted to say, kind of with what you were saying there, Sarah, is thinking about like when I was in nursing school and making sure that like I kept myself mentally healthy. Like I kind of have a story where I kind of I don't know if it would help anybody, but like I'll throw it out there anyways. Like I think I was in my third year of nursing and I got into actually a really bad car accident. So I don't know if you know this, but I got into a really bad car accident and essentially like I was going through a lot of physio and I couldn't actually like lift more than 5 pounds at the time. So when I went to clinical, they were just like, well, we don't know if this would be safe because we don't know if you can do the requirements of the job. And I was like, I understand, but like, I really want to make sure I continue with my nursing program. And I'll be honest, the school was not very supportive, and I guess I have to try to understand where they were coming from, um, because essentially they were like, well, if you can't continue with the duties that a regular nurse would, then you can't continue on in the program. So I was like, well, I guess if you're not going to accommodate me, I just have to put my life on hold. So I was actually really really depressed, essentially because I did 3 years of nursing, got into this really bad car accident, and then they were pretty much telling me that I couldn't continue. So I pretty much was like, fuck you guys, and I'm going to do something else. So I went to U of T and I did biological anthropology. It was kind of the best thing that I actually ever did. So I did pretty much 3 years of cultural and biological anthropology. And after that, I kind of was just like, oh, this is great. I want to become a forensic anthropologist. I'll be like Bones on TV, like working at the Picton cases, like looking at cold case files. And then I realized that the job market was very scarce for forensic anthropologists. And really, if I wanted to get into forensics, I'd have to be a cop. And I think if anybody knows me, if no, I won't even say it. I don't think putting a taser in my hands would be a good idea. So that wasn't an option for me. And my husband was just like, "Why don't you just go back and finish nursing school?" And I was like, I don't want to go back. And I actually did decide to go back. So I went back to nursing school, finished my fourth year. I like kicked the crap out of it. And I think this is the other thing. So because I didn't care, I actually did even better. It was like the weirdest thing. Like my fourth year was better than my first, second, third year combined. Like I think I had out of my 4 or 5 courses, I think I had A's in all of them, and one I had like an A minus or something. It was ridiculous. It was just like I just said to myself, I'm like, I'm going to do the best I can. but I'm not going to stress anymore. I'm not going to worry about this grade. I'm not going to worry about that. And I think also time helped with maturity, right? I did have a whole almost 3 years that kind of elapsed where I learned other study habits, where I learned about a whole different way of thinking because um, like I guess sociocultural anthropology and biological anthropology, as much as it still is sciences, like the papers and the things I was learning about was much different than actually nursing science, but very complementary because I felt that it gave me it kind of more it rounded me. I felt to be actually a better nurse because now I learned about how humans actually work, a little bit more about the human system and kind of understanding cultures, and then was able to take that back into my 4th year of nursing. So really, if you're ever feeling down and feeling like you can't continue, it's actually okay to check out. Like I fully was just like, I did 3 years of nursing. And I was like, no, I can't. I don't want to do this anymore. And I checked out. And of course, the program does have they have a time limit in terms of when you can go back. So I think it was like, you have to complete the nursing program within like 8 years or something.
So you almost weren't not you were almost not a nurse then. This is pretty interesting.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? Like, I've done 3 years. Why not go finish it? And if I want to become an anthropologist, I can still do that too. And I went back and I finished it. Technically, I think I have something like, it's ridiculous, Sarah. I think I have 3 credits to finish my biological anthropology degree. So I probably should do it at some point in time. Um, but I mean, it's okay to check out. Like if you're just like, you know what, like I'm so stressed out, I'm feeling depressed and suicidal. Honestly, it's nursing is not the be all and end all. It just isn't. Like I mean, there are so many options and so many other things that you can do that I don't think anybody should ever stress themselves out so much that they feel like they can't continue to go on. It's okay. It is absolutely okay to check out and be like, screw this. I can't do nursing school. I'm going to try something else. And that's okay. And it's okay to come back to it. I came back to it. I was just like, okay, I did my 3 years out and I came back to it and I was like, oh, it actually made me a better person. I was much more mature. I actually had my twins. I had my twins in between schooling. And I just think I was a more rounded person coming back into nursing school. And yeah, I mean, yeah, never feel like you're checking out. I never felt for 1 second that like people were gonna think down on me because I didn't go back or whatever the case. I just didn't care. I was just like, you know what, my sanity is more important than whether I have this BA or BSCN at all. So I continued my studies. I just continued something different, and I felt it actually improved how I am as a nurse today. So I mean, don't feel that you can't check out. It's okay.
That's a very interesting story. So I continue to learn more and more about you.
Yeah, everybody's different. Everybody has a different way of going about things. Um, sometimes life happens unexpectedly. Like for example, I hope my cousin doesn't mind, but my cousin's going through nursing school and his mom just died. His mom died about a month ago, and she's my aunt, and it was probably the hardest thing for him. And he's kind of trudging along. It's difficult for him, but the thing is, sometimes life gets in the way, and there's nothing you could do about it. You just have to make the best of your situation and kind of do what you need to do. And no one would ever look down on anybody for not being able to complete it or doing something different. At the end of the day, you are the most important person, and nursing will always be there. The program will always be there. You can always go back whenever you want. So that's at least my tip of advice.
Yeah, I think that's really important because I see a lot of posts online about people that are, for example, they're expecting, they're pregnant unexpectedly or something's happened and they have to move across the country and they want to transfer over to another school. So I think it's important to recognize that your mental health and your physical health is number one. You don't want to look back at your time in nursing school and not remember anything or just remember that you were completely stressed out the whole time because that's not a great experience either. And you don't really want to start out as a nurse just being completely stressed out at every level. Like it's okay to not want to do that. And I don't think you need to push through because you heard of that one person that was able to do it all and still make it work. Like it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, what should be important is yourself, your family, and then your career and all that stuff can kind of come separate, because I think it'll come when it comes. And I think keeping yourself healthy and taking care of you is the most important part. So, and I wish I could have told myself that, and have fun. Like, I mean, I wish when I was in nursing school, well, I did party a little bit, but I mean, I think like if you have the opportunity to go out and have a good time and get crazy and wild, go do it. Like, I mean, why not, right? Like, as long as you're not hurting anybody, go have that extra drink. Go out dancing before that exam. Like, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, do what you need to do to make yourself happy. And it's not all about sticking your nose in a book. It really isn't. Like, I mean, life experience is much more important than just reading and reading and having a very 4 years of very boring 4 years. So get out there, have fun, and try not to be so hard on yourself, because I'm sure most people are their own worst critic.
Right. I mean, there's no lack of work anytime soon. So that's also important to remember. Yeah, and I just wanted to end by saying that we're all going to be nurses at the end. So however difficult it seems, or maybe you didn't get the A that you wanted on a paper, at the end of the day, we are all nurses. When you start working, nobody's going to ask you what your average was in nursing school, or how well you did on certain assignments, or did you like a clinical instructor? Like, what I would say if I could talk to my younger self in nursing school is all the little things I stressed about, are they going to matter in 5 or 10 years' time? If the answer is yes, then you need to really work on it and figure it out. But if the answer is no, which is probably most of the problems I had, then just let it slide. Like you said, just don't don't care so much about it. Don't sweat the small stuff and figure out what's really important in your life. And if being a nurse is one of them, then great. But if it's not, then you just need to take some time to figure out what it is. Yeah, and I would say just keep things simple. I see a lot of posts online about getting into nursing school and what things do I need to buy, what do I need to have. I think, yes, it's good to have maybe the latest computer or the best nursing shoes, but really at the end of the day, it's about what you can do and what you can do to grow yourself as a person. I never thought about these sort of things. I just kind of used what I had because honestly, I didn't have a lot of money, and I'm not sure if having the best computer or the newest shoes is going to change anything. Maybe if it's more for a confidence thing, then go ahead, but don't feel like you have to have the latest gadgets in order to be
No,
successful in
trust me,
nursing school.
having the coolest nursing shoes will not change anything, especially if you go into L&D and they get splashed with amniotic fluid. So,
Or you leave them behind one day and someone takes them. Let's just be real. Like maybe someone's gonna steal your stuff. So
oh,
don't
that's
make it so
happened. Oh
hectic
no,
for other
that's
people.
so gross. Yeah, don't bring your flashy shoes to a place where people might steal your shoes. Oh my god.
So Amy, did you
Nope,
have
I
anything
think
else you
I've
wanted to add?
covered all of my bases.
Okay, well thank you for listening to the Gritty Nurse podcast. If you like what you hear, please like, share, and subscribe. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. See you next time.
See ya.